Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Zone Star State podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is Ishmael Johnson. Ish, how are you doing? It's February 25th. We had a thriller of a game last night, and I say
Yeah,
thriller. It wasn't
yep.
pretty, but it was intense, as you'd
It was
expect.
a very intense game. We have another intense game tonight. I'm in Dallas, and I don't know if you know this is the return or the first time that Luca is playing the Mavericks tonight. So
Mm.
there's a
Is it
lot
in
of
Dallas or is it in LA?
no. This one's in LA.
Okay, that's right.
I don't think they play again
I
in
thought they
Dallas.
played.
Look.
I don't remember. Maybe they don't.
Oh,
Like at the
April
end of the year.
9th.
Yeah.
April 9th, which if both teams I mean, Luca may not play that game. Let's be honest. So depending on where they are in the standings, but regardless, you said last night big game, tonight big game. We're recording on Tuesday, uh, but let's go to Lubbock a little bit to talk about Tech and Houston, a massive game that I lived up to a lot of what I thought, but also we can kind of use as the on ramp to talk about the game. When the starting lineups came out, I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It,
Tech was without Darren Williams and
Chance McMillan.
Chance McMillan, and I was like, okay, so they got. I thought in my mind immediately, I was like, so they got like six healthy players, or at least six players that could play in this game against Houston, right? Like
Yeah.
there are only six players that I would trust to touch the floor, and sure enough, six players only touched the floor. Houston ends up winning 69-61. Of course, I think the disappointing part for me is that we have not seen a fully healthy Tech against Houston. Of course, Tech won the first game, or not healthy, but fully available Tech, I should say,
Yes.
because JT Toppin was tossed early in the first game. Of course, they ended up winning, but regardless, we have not seen full strength Houston versus full strength Tech, and that's kind of disappointing. But what you kind of take away from Houston's win?
Yeah, like you said, without those two guards, Texas Tech just didn't have much offensively for them. They hung with them in the first half. It's 33-30 at halftime, and a lot of it was through JT Toppin and kind of playing inside out and trying to, break down Houston that way. I think Fran
Mhm.
Fraschilla on the call was exactly right that especially shorthanded, but even when at full strength, they had to make threes in this game,
Yeah.
and I think
I
Grant
think I
knew
think they
that.
said they wanted to get like 25 threes. Grant said he wanted to get
Yeah.
25 threes or something in this game.
Yeah, and Fran was like, "Make 10." So it was something like
Right.
go 10 of 25 or 10 of something, 10 of 30 even
Right.
would have been great. But they go 6 of 30 from 3,
Yeah.
and that was kind of the game because you can't extend Houston, and put them in rotation in that way, especially without two of your best scoring guards, then it just makes it tough. And Houston, full credit though, this was the second half was about as dominant of a defensive performance as you'll see, and it's
Mhm.
just on par for what Houston does every single game. And they just took the life out of that building. I think it was 7, 8 minutes without a bucket for Texas Tech in the second half,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that allowed Houston to slowly inch in front because it's not like they're a high powered offense either, but they eventually got in front by 8, 10, and kind of separated.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a great environment. It was really cool to see that arena rocking again.
That's
For
the
a
that's
massive
gotta be
game.
the
Yeah.
that is man, dude, they are just incredible. Like, that
Yeah.
is the best atmosphere in the Big 12, the best fan base, I think, probably in Texas,
Hmm.
and probably in the Big 12 at the very least. If you wanna go
Yeah.
national, I mean, I struggle to see many other teams in the country that just are constantly this is now through 3 different coaches, right? This is from Beard,
Right.
Adams
Right.
to McCaslin,
Yeah.
unwavering support, unwavering success. Like they have, and they've bought in, right? They have like
Right.
financially bought in as well. So full credit to Texas Tech because they always bring it.
Yeah. It was a blackout game. It looked awesome. And so yeah, like you said, like I think for me, this game for I'd say the first half of the first half, it was fairly 50-50, right? Like it was fairly back and forth, and that was really, really surprising. But towards the end of the first half, I kind of saw where Houston would eventually just kind of whittle away. One, like you mentioned, it Tech just wasn't hitting their threes. I think Christian Anderson was 0 for 6 from three. Elijah Hawkins, who was, he's not usually the guy who shoots first, but he was having to shoot first a lot just because of availability. He was 2 of 7. Toppin even stepped outside and tried a couple threes. He was 0 of 3. Kerwin Walton, you mentioned it. We were texting each other through the game. It was like Kerwin Walton can kind of only shoot threes, so like he was kind of he finished 4 of 11, which is
Yeah.
fine but not great. Um, and you just saw Houston, even when they weren't connecting early or when they were struggling. Because I'll give Tech some credit; they were pretty good on defense early on as well. Um, Houston just had those reliable ways to get buckets, whether it was like Milos Uzan, you mentioned it early on. You texted to me, he's like, oh, this is the kind of the game they need from him while everybody else gets into order because Emmanuel Sharp was a little off early, Jawan Roberts was a
Mhm.
little off early. So it was like, but Milos Uzan early on was the guy that was like, okay, he's going to be the steadier of the ship. And then later on, Joseph Tugler kind of got going a bit, and Houston Tech really Federico played fine. He is who he is as a reserve big, I think. But when he's your only big, and he has to defend Jawan Roberts and Joseph Tugler, and there's Javier Francis hovering around defensively, so it's like it's really tough. And I just kind of when Houston kept like that 5 to 6 point lead for most of the game, it felt like a 10 point lead because it just did
Mhm.
not feel like Tech had the guys to they have not the depth to continuously sustain on both ends of the floor because whether it was defensively, they were going to get tired because Houston just has all their options available, and offensively, they were just or Houston knew what they were going to do. Right? They knew Hawkins was going to set up everything. They knew Toppin was going to be the go-to guy first, and they knew Anderson was going to try to be that off guard, and it was just like that was all they had. There was no Darian Williams. There was no you mentioned Chance McMillan, and like, I don't take anything negative from this from Tech. It's disappointing, but I'm not down on Tech. I just now hope that those guys are available now going forward in a
Yeah.
consistent manner.
Yeah. And it's one thing if Houston had swept them, like had gotten the win in
Right,
Houston
right,
and the win in, like it would be a different feeling.
right.
Like, wow, Houston's like just
And
dominating.
not that I'm bitter or anything, but JT Toppin ruined a parlay for me, but it's fine.
Oh Lord, that's what it is.
I had I had 16. I think I had it was in this game. It was all in this game. I think I had him over 16, and he finished like 14 or something like that. And
14.
I
Yeah.
was like, come on,
Toppin,
man,
all you needed
hit
was
one
one
of
of
those
those,
threes,
yeah,
bro.
those late threes to fall. It's just hanging on to every shot.
I was
Oh,
very mad. I ended up falling asleep through the actually like the actual finish of the game through the end, and so the app usually sends you like a message like,
yeah.
"Oh, you hit" or whatever. And I woke up and I didn't see the message. I was like, "What happened?" I was like, "No!" And I checked. It was JT Toppin at 14, just staring at me in the
Yeah.
face.
You're sick. You mentioned the front court battle. I thought that was the most interesting thing because
Yeah,
we
yeah,
didn't get to see Toppin versus Houston last time, and they
right,
were able to play, or they were forced to play,
yeah,
Toppin and Federico together and they had been gone to this lineup, before. We talked about it on
yeah,
here, them going big at times, especially with McMillan and them out.
mhm,
That forced their hand. I think Federico did a terrific job against Roberts,
mhm,
really forcing him to be uncomfortable, ending the game 3 of 10 from the field. Now, Roberts did have a couple big baskets late. He had that really huge, I think it was like an up and under, like on the baseline, and he gets back to his left hand somehow to finish it at the paint. But
yeah,
overall, I thought Federico was really productive on the defensive end and rebounding. And then
mhm,
top end kind of took his matchup with Tugler, I thought, very, very seriously. Him and Tugler had a battle. I mean, those are
yeah, man.
awesome
Tugler's
players.
somebody who's really improved.
Yeah.
I think I think I'll have Tugler in where I thought Javier Francis would be for Houston.
Yes.
There goes the light in here. It's like motion sensor. Anyway, but
I think it's supposed to be fine. It's like the episode
but
in The Office. I don't know if you've seen the episode in The Office where
yeah,
they Dwight cuts off has a monitor for the lights to save money, and they always have to go like that. Anyway,
yeah. But yes, Tugler. This is a great game from Tugler. Like, I mean, I still have Toppin as like one of the guys in the conversation for Big 12 player of the year, and Tugler was right there going at him on the defensive end, holding his own.
yeah,
And eventually, you saw the limitations of what Tech could do, right? Because Federico, he's good, but he's not an offensive contributor.
correct.
Um, and he's kind of like almost, um, oh God, the Baylor player who was injured for a while. Oh my
Baylor player.
gosh,
Oh,
Jonathan
JTT?
Chama Chachua
Yeah,
before his breakout season, he kind of
yeah,
reminds me a lot of JTT, where you're
yeah,
like he's very limited, at the time, but you kind of see some idea of what he could contribute to eventually on offense. But anyway, he's not going to contribute on offense. So it was just Toppin basically against three players from Houston on the inside.
Yeah, last thing I'll say is I really thought, and this isn't an indictment on him, but he played
Yeah.
40 minutes. Christian Anderson, like with those two down, I was like, Anderson's gonna have to shoot
It
the ball
it had to be a big Christian Anderson game, and it just wasn't.
because no offense to Hawkins,
Yeah.
Walton, Overton, like Anderson when he's clicking is the guy that you're like, oh, he can carry us. But I
Yeah.
don't think it was realistic to expect him to go off against Houston. Like this isn't
Right.
Kansas
Right.
State. This isn't
That
like
would have
whoever
been.
the other games he
He's
went
had.
off.
Yeah, he's had really great games. He's really surprised me this season. Um, this would have been like, oh, we're talking about like a superstar if
Yeah,
he
like
went off in
draft
this game.
pick. Like
Yeah,
we
yeah,
would
yeah.
start
We're
putting him
talking
in like,
we're
oh,
talking like,
he's
is
going
he
to
going
the
to be here
pros.
next year? Yeah, is he going to be here next year? Type of performance.
Yeah, if we light up.
Yeah, because like you mentioned, as far as skill set goes, like as far as almost a three-level scorer, if you talk about the outside shot, the playmaking ability at times, like on the fast break, like he's the best overall guard they have, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's just like we'll talk about it next year, right? With that, like next year in a big spot, I'll expect something more from him against Houston, not as a freshman, not in this environment right now.
Yeah, he had 21 against West Virginia on the 22nd, so a couple
Yeah,
days ago, but that's a different animal than Houston is.
yeah.
Um, anything else? I think we covered it all pretty much.
No, yeah. I
Fun
mean, I
game.
think Houston. I think this officially clinched Houston the regular season. I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
at
So
least a share, if I'm not mistaken, or did
I
it
think I think
come
it.
together?
Let me
One
see.
or
I think
two.
it might be at least a share. I think you're correct.
Regardless, it's another title for Houston. It's another
Yeah, close to
incredible
share.
year for
Yeah.
Houston. I don't know if we've talked about it enough for this season, but for those tuning in for the first time, Houston has been one of our favorite teams to watch. They've been incredible. We've given Uzan a lot of credit for coming in and
Hmm.
improving as the year's gone on. Tugler, Roberts, all these guys, Sharp, Crier, incredible team. It doesn't even feel like Sharp's like 100%
I
yet,
was about to
and
say it
when
doesn't
that
feel like he's healthy
happens,
right now.
if that happens in the tournament, like in the Big 12 tournament or something, then watch out. Like I think this
Yeah.
is absolutely a Final Four caliber team. So
Yeah. I think Houston. I think all they need is Arizona lose one more game, and then they win the outright title.
okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, on the women's side, Baylor had a massive win over Kansas State on
Yeah.
the road. Kansas State had not lost on the road all season, and in a game where if you lose, you fall a game behind TCU in the standings.
Hmm.
And also, I think it would have tied you with Kansas State in the standings. So you all both would have been at 3 losses going into the final week. They just beat the brakes off of Kansas
Yeah.
State. Unbelievable. Start to finish, it was like 10-2 early, and then they just kept the lead, 10+ point lead for most of the game. And my biggest takeaway here is just watching it is, first of all, Aaronette Von Lay is awesome.
Yes.
And then also Aaliyah Matharu, who I don't even think she had like the biggest game. I had the box score up. It felt like she hit some big shots. No, yeah, 5 of 13 from the field. Yeah,
Yeah.
15 points. Those two are the difference this year. Like
Yes.
they still
Yeah.
have the same core: Andrews,
Hmm.
Fauntleroy, Little Page Bugs, so on and so forth. Yaya Felder, who Little Page
Yes.
Bugs didn't even play in this game, but like those two are the difference, and that takes you from a really good team to a potentially great team. Like this team should be in contention for a 2 seed at this point.
Right. No, 100%. I do love the fact that Nikki Collins just looked at the paint for Kansas State and said, "Noah Yoka.
Nope.
All right, let's figure this out. Let's get Von Lake going." Credit to him because these are the kind of games that we hope to see from Von Lake when we found out that she was going to Baylor, and it's so fascinating to see what this Baylor team looks like when they have a post threat, right? Which they have not had since Nalissa Smith, the Nikki Collins team, and even that team wasn't perimeter oriented as it was now. She was kind of working with
Yeah.
what they had left over. So regardless, yes, I'm very excited to see what this team can do because there were some times this year where we were like, what is this team improved? Is Von Lay the player that they needed? Is, all these other things? And what was that, 9 straight, like you said? I'm very fascinated to see what this team looks like going into the tournament because this Big 12 title race is going to be a battle.
Well, we're here. We are
Yeah.
here officially. This is Baylor will play TCU on Sunday
Mm.
in Waco in Foster Pavilion, and the winner is the outright Big 12 champion. Both teams have 2 losses. Now, TCU plays Houston on Wednesday,
Yep.
and wouldn't it be hilarious if Houston just
After all of this.
after all of this TCU loses to Houston? It's not going to happen. It'll probably be a 40. It's more likely they win by 50 points than they lose the game.
Sure.
But TCU will beat Houston on Wednesday, and then it will set up a game between 2 teams that are both 15-2, I believe, in conference.
Mhm.
And the winner will be 16-2 and will win the league in the regular season.
Yeah.
That
That's
doesn't happen every year for us. Like we
And
get
they're arguably coming off two of their most impressive victories, right? TCU's coming off; they just kicked West
West
Virginia's
Virginia.
ass. I'll just
Yep.
say like they just absolutely bludgeoned West Virginia. Haley Van Lith dropped 26 against a good team, right? And now, so it seems like both teams are like both cresting at the same point. And last year, I was at the game last year where again TCU was a different team. They didn't have Haley Van Lith. But they were still cresting at the similar point, and Baylor kind of put them back down to earth. Okay, well, TCU got the win in Fort Worth. And what does Foster change that? Foster, was, as we talked about, is an incredible venue. I do think that changes that a little bit. How much? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that will preview that game, I think.
Yeah.
Just moving forward, but in general, or I guess if we're not doing a podcast Friday, we could talk about it even more here.
Yeah.
It's like that game will decide not only champion, but like I said, I think a 2 seed. It'll decide obviously the top spot in the Big 12 tournament. Haley Van
Mm-hmm.
Lith, I did watch some of that game against West Virginia. She was hitting threes off the bounce, which
Mm-hmm.
had been, throughout her career, she's been kind of hit or miss from 3 specifically. I
Yeah.
think she hit 3 of them in that game. They handled West Virginia's pressure really well, and it sets up for a game where I think they match up really well with one another, like TCU and Baylor. I think
Mm-hmm.
both teams go into this. And if you remember the game back in, what was it, late January at TCU, where TCU ends up winning 80-75, I think
Mm-hmm.
TCU kind of jumped on them and Baylor came back. Like, I'm expecting an absolute classic here. This is a game between 2 top 15 teams fighting for a conference championship. We don't get that every year in the state of Texas. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the Houston and Tech game, like in theory, was kind of that, but Houston had a 3-game lead, 2-game lead on them. So
Yeah.
I'm very, very excited for Baylor versus Kansas State on Sunday at, I think it's like 5:30 p.m. for those
Mm-hmm.
wondering.
Prime
It's
time
gonna
slot.
be a lot of fun.